The Philadelphia 76ers have made a decision to let their head coach, Doc Rivers, go. Doc led the Sixers to the playoffs each of his 3 seasons in Philly. The problem is each year the Sixers lost in the second round of the playoffs. Not to mention Doc has now lost 10 Game 7s following the Sixers' Game 7 loss to the Boston Celtics on Sunday. He's lost 5 Game 7 straight. Philadelphia's got a lot of questions on the board, including if they will be able to retain James Harden, who can opt out of the last year. If his deal, the Sixers thought it was in their best interest to go find a new head coach. And by the way, speaking of James Harden, James was asked about his relationship with Doc Rivers following the Game 7 loss to Boston. And James said it was okay. And so many people have ran with that and said James didn't really love Doc Rivers. He was tired of Doc Rivers. I have no earthly idea if any of that is true. We're also hearing reports that Joel Embiid was not the happiest that Doc Rivers got the boot after 3 seasons. Obviously, if you're Embiid, if you really like Doc Rivers' demand, right, you're probably like, yo, I don't want all these head coaches being attached to my name. I don't want people to think you got about 2-3 years with me and I'm going to get you fired. Especially if he liked Doc personally, thought Doc brought the best out of him. Doc was the coach that got Joel Embiid to his first MVP this year. So maybe Embiid, Harden got to get on the same page about the next head coach. That's if James is there. James can make 4 years, 200 and around 202. If he signs with any other team out there, he can make about 4 years, 210 if he stays with Philly. The reason why those numbers don't jump like you typically see when a team has a player's bird rights is because of the NBA's collective bargain agreement. They have a rule where the Sixers can't offer an additional year because Harden will be at the age 38 on the back end of that deal. So that's why you see that. So I'm bringing that up for a reason. Pretty much James can sign dollar for dollar with the Sixers and any other team about the same amount of money. So that might factor in. Oftentimes we see guys stay on their current team because the team owns their bird rights and they can pay them more money. And James' situation, we're hearing a lot about the Houston Rockets. In theory, they pretty much can give James the same amount of money that Philadelphia could. And we know James is much more comfortable in the South. He's reportedly a Houston, Texas strip club legend. He's a Houston Rockets legend on the court, but he's definitely a legend off the court as well. If he decides to stay in Philly, the Sixers are reportedly interested in a bunch of head coaches. A lot of big names on the open market, including Nick Nurse, Mike Budenholzer, Frank Vogel, Monty Williams, Sam Cassell's another name. There are a few other candidates out there on the open market. Some believe Ty Lue will be available in the upcoming days. Could Ty Lue go steal Doc's job again? I thought Doc even getting this Philadelphia job was kind of interesting. If you remember, Doc stepped down with the Clippers and immediately took that job with Philadelphia. We thought he was going to take some time, but he kind of rushed into that opportunity to coach Joel Embiid, and 3 years is all he got. Look, I like Doc a lot. If you look at Doc Rivers' history, that Boston Celtics championship is one of the loudest championships in the history of the NBA. I don't know if I've ever seen a championship get more meat off the bone than the Celtics have gotten off that championship. That's what made Doc pretty much a legend as a coach, that one ring, and he was phenomenal. But I do believe for Doc's sake, he's just better when he's around all-time great players. I believe Doc is one of those guys that can push the greats to give everything they got. I'm talking about the all-time greats. I think Joel Embiid is a great player. I'm not so sure if he's the all-time great guy. That's why if I'm Doc, I'm definitely making a phone call to see if the Milwaukee Bucks want me, because that job with Giannis to me seems to be much more of Doc's status. It feels a little bit like that Boston job that he took or that he had, and then, I was able to get Kevin Garnett and Ray Allen next to Paul Pierce. Philadelphia, we'll see what they do. That one scares me because we're hearing Mike D'Antoni's name also in the rumbling of that one. If James were to stay, obviously there's a lot of Philly overlap that came from Houston, including their VP Daryl Morey, who was their VP and general manager, the Rockets general manager when D'Antoni was there for a while. if the Philadelphia 76ers hire D'Antoni, I don't know how Joel Embiid would be happy with that. You talk about not playing defense for a guy in Embiid who loves to compete on the defense end of the court. To me, that would be the Sixers throwing in the towel on their championship window. And I ain't even think James played bad this year. And I thought he had a really good regular season. Pretty much got screwed out of an all-star berth for Tyrese Halliburton. And I'm going to be honest with you guys. James won 2 games for the Sixers in the playoffs in the second round against Boston. That's much more than I ever seen James do in the playoffs. His game always takes a step back. I ain't never seen him win 2 games in a round. If anything, I'm putting that loss on Joel Embiid, but he's the superstar. You can't trade him. You can't fire him. So Doc Rivers, the other guy that had to get the blame, and he got the boot. So if you allow James to help pick that next head coach, if he stays in Philly, he's going to want Mike D'Antoni. And to me, that 7 seconds or less offense is a disaster, and it would pretty much be the end of the Philadelphia 76ers, and my estimations, competing for a championship. That's not what they need, is more floor spacing, less defenders on the court. That's not what they need, to me, at least. So y'all let me know what y'all think about Doc Rivers getting the boot. I'll say this. I definitely thought Doc could have got fired. And after Money got fired, I definitely said I think he will get fired after the Sixers lost in Game 7 to Boston. I'm not surprised. Just a lot of losses, a lot of big game losses for Doc. I try not to use the fact that he's lost those double-digit Game 7s against him now because, I mean, at the end of the day, he's got to get there. The problem with Doc is a lot of his series go incredibly long, right? He's had some incredibly long series, a lot of Game 7s. And unfortunately, because he plays in so many big do-or-die games, that has cost him throughout his career. And a lot of blown leads. And this is another 3-2 series lead that Doc had that got blown, losing Game 6 on your home court. Yeah, I thought Money was a guy that had a stronger case to keep his job. The Doc one, I could see, though. I feel like Philly capped out in the Doc Rivers era, and I just don't think they were ever going to get over the hump with him as their head coach.